John announced as he brought his secretary, also my friend, to our home.
"She's pregnant with my child. You raise the baby."
I was dumbfounded, but my husband cheerfully continued talking without any regard for my reaction.
"Actually, she's pregnant with my child. Ideally, we'd raise the baby together, but her family is wealthy, especially her father, who's very strict and would never approve of this situation. So, this is where you come in. One more kid isn't a big deal, right?"
My husband spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world, while his mistress looked at me with a triumphant smile.
"You know about my family background, don't you, Madison? For the baby's sake, I'm counting on you."
"I'm divorcing you. Please raise the baby on your own." As I firmly stated my decision, they both began to laugh.
"Then you're fired. Are you okay with being unemployed? You better be careful with what you say next."
Leaving those words, my husband left with her. I was more than angry. I was utterly appalled by their childish and thoughtless actions. I began preparing to give them a taste of their own medicine. I am Madison, 29 years old, working in the administrative department. I live in a rented apartment with my husband John, who's 1 year older than me, and our 3-year-old daughter, May. We met in college and were in the same club. Our relationship quickly progressed, and he confessed his feelings, starting our relationship.
"After graduating, I'm going to start a business like my dad."
He passionately talked about his future dreams back then. Inspired by his dedication and hard work, I resolved to support him. After graduation, with the support of his parents, he successfully started his business. After dating for 3 years, he proposed to me and we got engaged. I got married right after graduating from college and started working as an office worker at my husband's company, leading a busy but happy life. The company gradually grew bigger, but my husband, the president, always seemed busy. He went to work early in the morning and returned home after midnight. Sometimes he even stayed overnight at the company for work. I was worried that he might collapse from overwork. Then one day, unusually, he came home while our daughter was still awake. May, seeing her father's face after a long time, was happily frolicking around. After putting May to bed around 8 p.m., I went to the living room where my husband was sitting with a serious expression, carefully choosing his words to discuss something.
"I have a friend's situation I want to discuss. He's got a wife and a kid, but he ended up getting his mistress pregnant. He's really troubled. What would you say to him, Madison?"
I think there are circumstances only the parties involved can understand. So I have no say in this. They need to have a serious discussion, don't they? He seemed convinced by my response.
"You're right. Having a discussion is important. Thanks, that helped. I have to get up early tomorrow, so I'm heading to bed first."
I wondered why he suddenly brought up such a topic. He's so busy, yet he's taking time for a friend's consultation. Well, I might just lecture him saying, "It's your own fault." With these thoughts, I finished the rest of the housework. A week later, I was having lunch at a cafe near the company with Emily, my friend and colleague, who also works as a secretary at my husband's office. Whenever our schedules align, we have lunch together like this. Usually cheerful, she seemed a bit down today. She was talking less and didn't have much appetite, barely touching her food. "Are you okay? You don't seem well." As I expressed my concern, Emily hesitantly began to speak.
"Have things been going well with John lately?"
Taken aback by the sudden question, I honestly replied, "It's normal as always. John played with May yesterday and even discussed a friend's issue with me. I guess our relationship is good."
"That's good. He's busy, but is he sleeping well?"
As his secretary, she must be aware of his schedule. Still, something felt off. He's been really busy lately, working from early morning until late at night, but he's managing his sleep and meals well. Why do you ask all of a sudden? At my query, Emily looked uneasy, not her usual confident self.
"I want you to see this."
She showed me an ultrasound picture. "Are you pregnant?" She nodded slightly. As I looked intently at the photo, she continued.
"I've been having an affair with a married man. We were careful, but I never expected this to happen. What should I do?"
I remembered John's consultation from the day before. "Did you talk about this with my husband?"
"How did you know? Did he say something?"
I was shocked that John's friend was actually my childhood friend. I was surprised they were close enough for such a personal consultation and that she, raised by a strict father, had gotten into this situation. John seemed serious about it.
Really? I know it's wrong, but I was drawn to him. My parents would never approve. I need to talk to his wife too. I'm sorry for bringing this up suddenly, but I couldn't keep quiet thinking about you and May. What should I do?
The mention of my daughter and me brought the worst scenarios to my mind, but without solid proof, I refrained from dwelling on it deeply. You really need to reflect on this. Like I said to John, the people involved need to have a serious talk. As your childhood friend, I have a lot to say to you. Forcing a smile, I looked at Emily, who then confidently said, Talking about it has cleared my mind. I had found the answer with him, but still felt guilty. But since you are kind, I believe you'll accept my feelings. I'm feeling braver now. Well, good luck. Although I said that to her, my mind was swirling with different emotions. That night, as I put my daughter to bed, I kept thinking about my conversation with Emily. I felt terrible for suspecting John of cheating without solid proof. Looking at my daughter's sleeping face, I despised myself for such thoughts. Around midnight, John came home in high spirits. As I went to greet him at the entrance, I saw Emily leaning on him. My heart raced, realizing my suspicions were true.
I brought my friend whom I talked about yesterday. We have a long discussion ahead, so let's go to the living room.
Ignoring my stunned state, they sat on the living room sofa. Then John began to speak.
You know she's pregnant, right? She's pregnant with my child.
Emily wore a victorious smile, different from her demeanor earlier in the day.
You said it before, right? That people involved have their own circumstances and shouldn't be judged easily. It's important for everyone involved to have a thorough discussion.
His serious tone made it clear this was no joke.
That's why I brought Emily here right away.
So you both came to consult with me and mock me? I spoke sternly and John laughed it off.
No, that never happened. When Emily told me what she talked to you about, I was surprised, but it made it easier for her to talk to you. I'm actually grateful to her.
We're having a serious conversation. Stop laughing. Just tell me what you want. My frustration with John's attitude was evident. Then he dropped a bombshell.
I want you to take care of the baby. You have experience with childcare, and one more kid isn't a big deal, right?
Of course, I objected. Why should I take care of the baby? The baby's not mine. Besides, do you even realize what time it is? May's sleeping upstairs, and you're causing a disturbance to our neighbors. Then Emily chimed in.
The baby carries John's genes. As his wife, you have a right to raise the baby. Don't throw a tantrum just because you're upset about having your husband taken away.
Both John and Emily looked down on me, smugly displaying their affection in front of me. Seeing John like this, I felt my affection towards him cool down.
I'll just pack a few things.
We haven't finished discussing this. You both need to inform your parents too. Frustrated by the lack of resolution, I confronted John, but he evaded me.
I'd rather not involve the parents. Emily's dad is scary. Anyway, we're busy with a 2-week business trip. When we return, we'll arrange a meeting to talk. Just wait at home quietly.
My anger peaked, trembling as John and Emily hastily left the house. This is ridiculous. Not a babysitter or a convenience for you. All my efforts for John seemed wasted. I laughed at his childish and shallow actions and made a resolution. I began packing. The next day, I explained the situation to my boss and requested for leave. I decided to take my daughter and go back to my parents' house. But first, I visited someone who offered their support. This way, we were prepared for the upcoming discussion with John and Emily. Finally, when John returned from his so-called business trip, we agreed to meet again to discuss the future. I left my daughter with my parents and waited at home for their arrival. At around 7 p.m., the doorbell rang, welcoming John and Emily inside. They displayed their affection without paying me any mind.
Emily looks cute from any angle. I wish I had met you sooner.
Oh, John, from now on, I'll be the one to support you. Disgusted, I sighed and placed a filled-out divorce form on the table, speaking calmly. I want a divorce, John. I'll take custody of May. I'll also be asking for property division from both of you, and you two will be raising the baby yourselves.
Are you sure about this? You'll no longer be the wife of a CEO.
After my firm statement, John made a foolish comment. That's fine by me. A man who lies about work to cheat and make babies is neither a good husband nor a good father. John then smirked creepily.
Then you're fired as of today.
What? I couldn't understand how he reached that conclusion from our conversation.
You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce. You'll have to support May without any income. Besides, what will happen to Emily's child if we divorce now? At least stay with her for another year, then we'll announce the marriage after getting approval. How heartless can you be?
John's right. Don't interfere with our plans. You've always been inferior in family background, looks, and education. Just listen to us.
Ignoring their retorts, I continued. About the property division amount? John interrupted me.
You're just after money. How disappointing. I've paid you a salary for 7 years. That's your property division, right? You've lived comfortably thanks to me, the CEO. You can take it to court, but I know capable lawyers. You don't stand a chance.
Just how far will he go in belittling others? As I grew frustrated, a certain person emerged from the next room.
It's been a while since we met at Madison's wedding. We haven't seen each other since I delegated my responsibilities, but I never expected to meet like this.
Emily's father, Robert, a CEO of a top contracting company for John's firm, appeared, shocking the couple as their faces paled.
About the capable lawyer you mentioned, is that someone I introduced to you?
Confronted by him, John was at a loss for words, and Emily, his own daughter, was trembling and looking down. Robert, unfazed, continued.
Salary is compensation for labor, not a substitute for property division. It's only right to demand the market rate. Make sure to pay child support for May. Discuss the division of assets properly with Madison. Well, even if you are Emily's father, I don't think it's appropriate for you to interfere in mine and Madison's matters. Madison is asking for money, so I'll consider it, but Emily is pregnant with my child. If you have any humanity, Madison should just give up. Also, she's fired.
Robert grabbed John's collar after hearing his full argument.
You're the one who's fired. What?
Robert's tone suddenly changed, and he shouted, leaving John too shocked to resist.
After all Madison has done for you, how dare you do such things? You're not fit to lead the company. Step down immediately. This worthless company has grown only because of her and the staff's efforts. I've supported your company because of Emily, but now you're barely working. Enough with this. I'm sorry, sir.
His apology was too late.
And you, Emily, a woman who gets involved with a married man isn't fit to raise a child properly.
Robert raised his voice and glared at them both.
What's the matter with you? That's no way to talk to your own daughter. John, say something. He said horrible things to me. If we're going to be together, you can't just obey everything my father says. Convince him somehow.
Emily, seething with anger, confronted John, but he, usually so assertive, was frozen stiff by Robert's presence.
This wasn't supposed to happen,
John whispered in a faint voice, clearly in turmoil. To the confused pair, I addressed them with a smile on my face. It's really good that I had these 2 weeks of business trip to prepare for this. It all worked out perfectly. Emily glared at me, but I didn't have time to care about her feelings. I asked your father to wait in the next room. In a discussion like this, it's only right that your family should be involved, don't you think? I've been wondering how you were planning to hide your pregnancy while living at home.
Madison is right. If she hadn't told the truth, this would have become a terrible family secret. What a ridiculous plan you two came up with.
Emily's father sighed deeply.
I've heard about Madison from the staff managing your company. 7 years ago, she gave up numerous job offers, despite being top of her class, to work at your nearly bankrupt company and helped turn it around. How could you forget what she did for you and betray her so terribly?
Robert, giving John a cold look, continued.
I've been supporting your dream by continuing to finance it, but I've decided to cut off any ties with your company now. Please, wait. That's a separate issue, right? If your funding stops, my company will go bankrupt. It will cause trouble for our clients and employees will be left in the dark. Please, reconsider.
John, pale and desperate, begged on his knees, but Robert's decision was firm.
Don't ever call me your father-in-law. You have nothing to worry about. I intend to take care of all your company's employees, including Madison. They're too valuable to be wasted under a lazy scum like you. I've already informed your father about everything, and he's given his consent. Now you have to start over from scratch on your own. This is too much. Madison, please, don't leave me or the company. We've been through so much together. We can get a divorce, but you can't quit the company. Emily is cute, but the company needs someone as capable as you.
John, with bloodshot eyes, pleaded to me, but I just laughed it off. How selfish can you be? After all I've done for you and your betrayal, you seriously think I would stay? I'm getting a divorce and I'm definitely quitting. When I firmly declared my decision, John realized he had no way to argue and became suddenly weak. He completed the divorce papers as he trembled, and we were about to leave, but Emily, not yet giving up, blocked our way.
After all the trouble of finding someone my father was about to accept, this is pointless, and if the company collapses, I'll be unemployed too.
She approached her father with puppy eyes.
Since all the employees are going to your company, I can work there too, right? I'm your daughter, after all. And about the pregnancy, it was a lie so that I could get married quickly to John, so don't worry. I want you to apologize for how you spoke to me.
Emily shockingly confessed the truth. John collapsed to his knees in disbelief, and I was beyond words. Her father quietly approached her.
All the more reason not to forgive you. Make your own living from now on. Don't even think about coming back to my house.
After this, John and Emily started a shameful blame game against each other. Emily's father and I left the scene, hearing their angry shouts. The next day, after submitting the divorce papers, John and I became strangers. Through the capable lawyer introduced by Robert, I demanded and successfully received a total of $365,000 from John as the property division and child support. Emily, abandoned by both the company and her father, paid a property division of $12,000 in a lump sum and disappeared from our town, likely facing hard days ahead. As for me, I'm now immersing myself in work at Robert's company with familiar colleagues, adjusting to life with just my daughter and living peacefully. My former in-laws have apologized several times, promising to keep John away for good. My current peace is all thanks to the help and support from those around me. I am grateful to everyone, and I am determined to be a source of support for them, just as they have been for me.
We found your child on the balcony, so we took her into custody. A police stood at the door when the doorbell rang in the middle of a winter night. I was confused. After all, my only daughter was sleeping with me. The girl the police had with him was about 5 years old, her lips were blue, and she was shivering. She's not my child. I don't know her. Even after I told him this, the police, still doubtful, said he would take her to the hospital. Her hair was unkempt and grown out, and her dirty clothes were tattered. Unwashed, looking about the same age as my daughter, but very thin. Who is this girl? Why was she on my balcony? At that time, I had no idea about the tumultuous events that were about to unfold around this girl. I am Vanessa, a 32-year-old company employee. I lived on the first floor of a condominium bought by my parents. With my high school classmate husband, John, and our 5-year-old daughter Mary. John, a company employee, was often busy with business trips and absent even on weekends, helping colleagues with their work. One day, while John was away on a business trip, the doorbell rang while my daughter and I were home alone. It was a police on the intercom in the middle of a winter night. Confused by this unexpected visitor, I went out to find the police saying, "We found your child on the balcony and took her into custody." I was utterly baffled. What? If you mean my daughter, she's sleeping inside. What? The police was surprised, but I was more shocked. I hadn't heard any noise of the girl entering the balcony while sleeping. The girl with the police was about 5 years old, her lips blue and shivering. It was cold enough for snow that day, so it was no surprise. She's not my child. I don't know her. Even after I told him this, the doubtful police said, "We're taking her to the hospital now." I felt sorry for the girl, who seemed so cold. So I brought a warm blanket from inside and wrapped it around her. Her hands were like ice. She was still so young, yet she held back tears and bit her lip without making a sound. Her hair was disheveled, and her tattered clothes were dirty at the collar, unwashed. She looked very thin and poorly nourished. Who is this girl? Why was she on my balcony? I was puzzled and saddened to think of a child the same age as my daughter suffering like this. I couldn't sleep much that night, worried about the girl, and then I got a call from my husband. Anything unusual happened while I was away on a business trip? Actually, an unknown girl was on our balcony. The police took her to the hospital. It was shocking. Why didn't you take care of her yourself? What? But she's a stranger, there's nothing I can do. You're a mother, too. You should have taken care of that little girl instead of leaving her to the police. That's so sad. I was puzzled by my husband's sudden anger. How did he know she was a little girl? I hadn't mentioned that. When I questioned him, his response was evasive. Well, actually, that girl is the daughter of an acquaintance. Her mother is gone, and I thought she was pitiable. So I brought her here yesterday, thinking you would take care of her. That's... You weren't on a business trip? You should have explained the situation properly. Although my husband apologized, I couldn't believe he had left a small child on the balcony on such a cold day. Even if she was dressed warmly, she could have easily frozen. So, where are you and what are you doing now? My husband said he was looking for the girl's mother, but I felt he was hiding something. After he returned from his business trip, the police handed the girl over to him, and he left her with me. Did you find her mother? What about her father? No, not yet found. And I don't know about the father. By the way, who is this acquaintance? Just someone I know. Enough. I have another business trip. Wait. What about this girl? Ignoring my protests, my husband left, leaving the girl behind. I thought his behavior was odd, and while looking through his belongings for clues, I found something in the pocket of his suit. Shocked by its contents, I tried calling him, but he was unreachable. Suddenly, I noticed my daughter Mary and the girl looking up at me anxiously. What's your name? Cindy. After Cindy, in a fidgety manner and a small voice, revealed she was also 5 years old. The same age as my daughter, I smiled kindly at her. Startled, she stared back at me, smiled, and then held her grumbling stomach. Are you hungry? Yes. When I made pasta for my daughter and Cindy, she stared at it intently, as if it was something unusual, and began to eat eagerly. She ate so quickly that her mouth was covered in sauce. When I reached out with a tissue to wipe her face, Cindy quickly covered her head with both hands as if to protect herself, which gave me an uneasy feeling. It's okay. I'm just going to wipe your mouth. After I spoke gently to her, Cindy relaxed, turned her face towards me, and let me wipe the sauce off. Then she started eating the pasta again. Cindy looked completely satisfied after finishing her meal, but her dirty body needed to be taken care of. As I prepared the bath and helped her undress, I gasped when I saw her body. What is this? Her body was covered with numerous bruises, as if she had been hit and pinched. Trying not to show my agitation, I cheerfully took her to the bathroom. When I tried to wash her, Cindy said, "It's okay. I can do it myself," and started to fill a tub with water, for some reason. Wait a minute. What are you doing? She looked up at me with a puzzled expression, as I unintentionally spoke in a scolding tone. This is how I always do it. What? You wash with water? She nodded at my question, and just as she was about to pour water over herself, I hurriedly stopped her and carefully washed her entire body with soap. After that, when we got into the bathtub together, she murmured, "It's so warm." and seemed to enjoy the warmth. I learned that she rarely had the opportunity to bathe at home. And on the few occasions she did, her mother told her to wash with water. The realization that she had accepted this as normal without question tightened my heart. After the bath, I dressed Cindy in my daughter Mary's clothes and neatly arranged her hair. And she looked completely different. Standing next to my daughter, they looked just like sisters. I watched them with a smile as Cindy and my daughter, who somewhat resembled each other, were getting along like real sisters. Cindy was an honest and quiet child, clearly craving affection. She would come to me while I was cooking, tug at the hem of my skirt, and smile at me. When it was time to sleep, she held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go. Mary also became very fond of Cindy, and the two of them grew close like real sisters. Even after a week, I still couldn't get in touch with my husband. He had said that Cindy's mother was an acquaintance of his. But I couldn't keep looking after a small child indefinitely with just that information. I gave up trying to contact my husband and consulted the police. And it was decided that Cindy would go to a facility. Tears rolled down her big eyes. And she kept looking back at me as she was taken away by the facility staff, filling me with sadness. Time passed without any news from my husband, and I finally made a decision. 9 years later, I was living in my parents' house with my daughter Mary and Cindy. I had adopted Cindy after she was taken to the facility. My parents also treated her like their real granddaughter, saying she came to us by fate. The two girls grew up beautifully and closely as sisters. Their dream of becoming models came true, and recently, Mary and Cindy became junior models featured in magazines as beautiful sisters. Stepping into the glamorous world, the two girls, Cindy and Mary, were aiming for greater success with lively expressions on their faces. One day, the doorbell at my parents' house rang, and when I opened the door, there stood my ex-husband John, looking shabby and worn out. Behind him was an unknown woman who introduced herself as Kim. Not wanting to cause a scene outside where the neighbors might see, I let them into the house. Then, sitting on the living room sofa, the two of them suddenly started talking. Actually, Cindy is my child. John, who hadn't been in touch for 9 years and didn't even apologize, made this statement. I sighed in disbelief. I thought so. She does resemble you. And? Is this woman your partner? John nodded at my question and started telling the story of how he met Kim. Kim had been working at a bar he frequented. And even though she knew he had a wife and child, they got involved. And she became pregnant with Cindy. However, John couldn't decide to divorce me, and Kim grew tired of parenting and abandoned it. Desperate, John thought of having me raise Cindy. It was a convenient story, but I was even more surprised by what followed. Please, give Cindy back to us. My ex-husband suddenly stood up from the sofa, knelt down, and made this outrageous request, almost sobbing. Really? I saw her by chance in a magazine. She's become so beautiful. Isn't she popular now? What does that have to do with you? She has nothing to do with you too. But I am Cindy's real mother. You're just a fake, after all. After all this time, you have the nerve to say that without any contact. At that moment, John, who had been kneeling, clung to my feet with a pitiful look. We're in trouble with no money. Cindy is our only hope. Please give her back. How low? You plan to make Cindy work to support you? I refuse. What? You're just using Cindy and Mary to make money, aren't you? That's unfair. Stop making accusations. Their money is saved in their own bank accounts. Cindy is my child too. I will never give her back. Then Kim stood up from the sofa. looking as if she was about to grab me without any restraint, and I felt fear. "What are you doing to my mom? Stop it." Cindy then rushed in. She stood in front of me with her arms spread wide, staring down Kim. "Cindy, you've become so beautiful. Do you remember me? I'm your mom. Let's go home together. You're not my mother. Get out of this house." Cindy clung to me and started crying. Although she was young at the time, it seems she faintly remembers the terrible things she went through. "Cindy, you're mistaken. Remember, you were very young back then." At this point, I presented the note and photo I had found in John's suit back then. The note read, "I don't want to raise a child. I can't find Cindy cute. Please get rid of her somewhere. If you won't marry me, let's run away together." And the photo showed a young Cindy covered in bruises. Of course, there were also hospital reports. Even now, do you still say you're her parents? That, well, you tried to push a child you didn't want to raise onto me, right? Such a sweet child, you made her go through such horrible things. That was all John's doing. I didn't know about it. I was too young to raise a child, it couldn't be helped. Anyway, I'm taking Cindy back. Unfortunately, that's not possible. Cindy and I have legally adopted each other, so I'm her parent by law. What? No way. That's a lie. Kim's momentum visibly waned upon hearing about the law. But John still seemed unwilling to give up. If that's the case, I'll completely break up with Kim and let's start over. Mary and Cindy are both my kids. We can just go back to being a couple like before, no problem, right? What are you saying now? You just want to have it all your way? Like I'd let that happen. Listening to their exchange, I was more dumbfounded than angry. I didn't want anything to do with these people. I have some more unfortunate news for you, John. We are no longer married. Huh? After you went missing, 3 years passed, and I filed for divorce, which was granted. What? Why did you do that on your own? Just as John was about to grab me, the sound of a police car approached. My parents had called the police after seeing Kim's aggressive behavior. Well, the police are here now, so please don't come to our house ever again. No. Please forgive me. I'll give up on Cindy, but at least lend me some money. John showed his disgraceful side until the end. Afterwards, he and Kim were taken away by the police. I plan to get alimony from Kim and both compensation and child support from John, since both are cut off from their relatives and acquaintances. They'll probably face hardships from now on. Despite everything, the little girl who once trembled in fear has now grown up wonderfully. I look forward to the future that my daughters, full of dreams, talk about. And I will live happily with my kind parents and 2 loving daughters.
I'll take the rich husband and the effortless life for myself. Having never truly engaged in romance, I managed to enter into married life at the age of 40. We lived together in a high-rise apartment, financially and mentally settled, thinking our lives were going perfectly. Then suddenly, my younger sister arrived and made the statement like that. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Are you listening, Sandra? I'm going to marry your husband, so please take care of the divorce papers for me. When I looked at my husband, he was smirking, not entirely displeased. So, this man never really cared about me, as long as he had money. Although I had felt it, I had pretended not to notice, and now I was disgusted with my own foolishness. However, I had not just been foolish. All right then. Do as you please from now on. Really? Well, then I won't hold back, I'll get him. At that moment, I was actually laughing inside. I knew that their future was doomed. I am Sandra Morgan. At 40, I am enjoying my single life. I moved out of a family home that included my parents and sister. We weren't wealthy growing up, but I adored my parents, who always put us children first, and I wanted to make them proud when I grew up. I was a very plain child through elementary, middle, and high school, with no particular hobbies or interest in romance. I devoted myself to studying, graduated from a good university, and managed to land a job at a major corporation, all to honor my parents. After graduating from university, I successfully found a job at a securities company as I had expected. Although my salary wasn't bad, I wanted to earn more on my own, so I left the company and taught myself stock investing. Now, as an investor, I'm living comfortably with the income I've made. My initial days as an investor were fraught with difficulties, but I viewed it all as experience and kept a positive attitude, trying over and over again. It took many years before I began to see results, but the seeds I had sown finally bore fruit, and I was able to fulfill my childhood dream of repaying my parents. Although I had achieved a successful and comfortable life living in a high-rise apartment, I began to feel a bit bored with my lifestyle. To alleviate this boredom, I decided to pick up a hobby other than studying for the first time. There are many hobbies to choose from. Sewing, cooking, sports, there's a world of options, but I chose baking. There wasn't a specific reason, except that there was a baking class nearby. I usually settled for delivery or dining out for dinner, so I doubted if I could manage baking. However, feeling somewhat suited for it after giving it a try, I decided to really get into baking. A few days later, I gathered my courage and went to the nearby baking class. So this is it. It's quite stylish for a class. I chose it because it was near my house, but it turned out to be quite popular, attended by a wide range of people from young children to the elderly. As someone who rarely interacted with people or engaged in conversations, I felt a bit out of place at first. Then, a part-time instructor approached me. "Is something the matter? Are you here to attend a class?" "Yes, it's my first time at a place like this and I don't know anything." "I see. There's no need to be so nervous. Come this way, please." The man was not particularly young, but he was kind and guided me inside. It had been a while since I had conversed with a man, so I was probably blushing at that time. I was impressed by the unexpectedly large classroom. There were several instructors standing, and I felt out of place. But then I noticed other women around my age and automatically felt a sense of familiarity, thinking I could make it here. The man's voice echoed through the crowded venue, managing the program via microphone. Unknowingly, I found myself naturally looking at him, just wanting to watch him. In this lecture, we were divided into groups, each with an instructor assigned to guide us. I ended up in a group with people of similar age and some young couples. We waited at the cooking station for our instructor to arrive. "Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan, and I'll be overseeing your group. Although I'm just a part-time instructor, I'll do my best, so please work with me." To my surprise, the instructor assigned to our group was the same man who had guided me earlier. Although he mentioned being a part-time instructor, it didn't matter to me. I was thrilled to receive guidance closely from someone I was already a bit interested in. Once the lecture started, he was busy managing multiple participants and couldn't come over to me immediately, but knowing he would eventually made it easier to concentrate on the task at hand. While some of the processes were challenging, I started to enjoy baking. Then he finally came to assist me. "You seem to be having a good time. Do you enjoy baking?" "Well, yes, some parts are tough, but it's interesting." "That's good." He said that with a smile, leaving me speechless. During a particularly difficult part, I asked for a demonstration, and he showed me without a hint of annoyance. His expression turned serious, and he skillfully performed the task. Watching his adept movements, I felt increasingly drawn to him. Thank you. I usually don't cook much. It's amazing what professionals can do. I still have a long way to go. Actually, today is my last day teaching here. I'm planning to hone my skills and open my own shop to become a full-fledged pastry chef. I was deeply impressed by his dreams as he shared them. Realizing that I was attracted to someone younger who was passionately pursuing their dreams, it dawned on me that the attraction was more than just platonic. Ryan, I believe you can achieve your dreams. I think you are someone who can truly dedicate oneself. Hearing that really motivates me. I'll do my best. If it's okay with you, Ryan, I'd like to help you. Here's my business card. Please contact me if you feel like it. After receiving the business card, he smiled slightly and returned to instruct others. I don't remember anything about the lecture after that. I was so focused on him that before I knew it, the lecture had ended. I left the classroom in a daze. Realizing that just being there today was a huge gain for me, I smiled all the way home. Ryan Gale, huh? It would be nice if he contacted me. The very next day, he did. Over the phone, he asked about what kind of work I did and how I could assist him. Not liking to hide things, I told him everything about how I came to be in this situation without holding anything back. Initially, he was hesitant, but he accepted, wanting to meet the expectations I had set for him. After that, we began to communicate more often, and on holidays, I would meet to personally learn pastry making, which quickly brought us closer. For someone like me who had never been in love, this was a fresh and intense experience. Holding hands, sharing laughs over trivial conversations, kissing and loving each other deeply were all filling my heart. About half a year later, we decided to get married. We both wanted to be closer to support each other more directly and witness each other's growth. Never had I imagined that a hobby I picked up randomly would lead me, who had nothing to do with falling in love, to such happiness as a woman. But anyhow, my life smoothly transitioned into a successful one. Ryan, I will continue to support you. And as your wife, I'll stand by you firmly. Leave it to me, Sandra. I will definitely fulfill my dreams. And you can rely on me whenever you need to. I'll always be by your side. My husband Ryan now lives with me in our high-rise apartment. For him, I leased a dedicated kitchen room and arranged for a pastry chef instructor through my business contacts, doing everything I could to support him. In the beginning, he would lock himself in the kitchen room all day making pastries or go to his one-on-one lessons passionately chasing his dreams, which made me feel my support was worthwhile. However, about 6 months after our marriage, I started noticing a change in him. I don't know where he learned about it, but after finding out that I was a major shareholder living off dividends, his spending became more extravagant, and he began to show up less frequently for his lessons. Disturbed by his behavior, I spoke to him sternly, not to lecture but to kick him into gear. You've been quite sloppy lately, haven't you? You're also being reckless with money and skipping lessons, right? The instructor even contacted me about it. Well, I can't help it with the money, can I? I need it to buy the right tools and stuff. And about the lessons, it's not a problem since I go when I want to. This pattern of rebuttal was becoming typical. I was starting to run out of patience with him. However, it seemed he hadn't given up on his dream of becoming a pastry chef, so I decided to watch over him with a warm heart. Our relationship became strained. As we continued living together, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sandra? Do you recognize me? It's Tracy. Let me in. The person on the intercom was my sister, Tracy. Honestly, we weren't close. I had always found it difficult to get along with her. My sister was the complete opposite of my plain self. She had always been charming and had a way with people. Her carelessness with men had been a concern since her student days, and I often saw our parents scolding her for it. My dislike wasn't just because of that, it was also uncomfortable how she treated me with disdain even though I am her family. I had no idea how she found out about my place. Unable to refuse her entry, I reluctantly let her into the room. What brings you here so suddenly? You haven't even contacted me until now. And who told you where I live? From Mom. I heard you got married, so I thought I'd come and meet your husband. That doesn't mean you can just show up all of a sudden, okay? Who's that? A friend of yours? As my husband peeked out from the back of the room, Tracy's demeanor changed, eyeing him like prey. Nice to meet you. I'm Tracy, her sister. Wow, Sandra, your husband is really handsome. Is he? Well, maybe he looks that way to you. What a lovely sister. Since you're here, I'll make you some pastries. While I felt irritated that my husband casually invited her in, my anxiety about my sister grew. She might cause problems with him too. But, being an adult, I hoped she would be more considerate. With these mixed feelings, I spent that day. Though just for a short time, I joined in the pastry making that day. Wanting to close the distance that had started to grow between my husband and me, I made pastries with him. From that day on, my sister began visiting our house frequently. Sometimes she would come by even when I was not home, just because my husband was there. He said he was teaching her pastry making, but I felt uneasy. Isn't Tracy coming today? I wanted to teach her a new pastry recipe. I don't know. It's nice that you're paying attention to Tracy, but what about yourself? The instructor says you're not focusing on your lessons. I'm human, you know? Do you think I can think about making pastries every day? Since Tracy's visits, I had felt my husband's decline deepening. I wanted to believe in him, so I didn't speak harshly, but I knew if he continued to slack off, I would have to confront him strongly. A few days later, my husband unusually went out for a lesson. Just as I was thinking that I would enjoy some peaceful time at home, the intercom rang. It must be Tracy. Knowing this deep down, I sighed deeply and reluctantly let my sister into the house. So, what do you want today? Since Ryan isn't here, maybe you should go home. If you're just here for the pastries, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. You're so cold. Today, I came to see you, not Ryan. You need me? Okay, wait in the living room. I'll bring some coffee. She has something for me, not my husband? What could my sister, who has never shown any interest in me, possibly want? Making the coffee, I tried to think of what it could be but came up empty. Reluctantly, I decided to listen to what she had to say. So, what do you need from me? I'm busy, so make it quick. Yeah. So, you know Ryan is here, right? I've fallen in love with him. It seems he feels the same way about me. I'm really sorry, but could you divorce him? Her words were shocking. However, my heart wasn't stirred, and I continued the conversation calmly and methodically. Is that all? Fine by me. You two have agreed on this, right? I'll divorce him for you. I don't need any money such as property division. If the two of you are happy, then do as you please. I sipped my coffee, wetting my throat and taking a deep breath. I almost smirk, but I hold it back. Just when I was thinking of divorcing him, here comes an unexpected savior. I know he's been skipping lessons that he was going to attend. And he also says he can live off my wealth without contributing. Continuing this marriage would only turn him into a completely degenerate person, so my sister's proposal was quite appealing. Really? Are you serious? Yay! Thank you, Sandra. I know it'll be tough for you to move out, but don't worry, I'll help you. Huh? What do you mean? What's this about me having to move out of the apartment? This is Ryan's place, right? If you divorce, I'll be the one living here. You'll have to move out, right? Wow, I'm finally living the high life. I hope you find someone better too. Oh, so that's it. I realized that my husband must have been bragging as if he owned everything I had, charming my sister with the illusion. The love I had is gone, and now it's almost laughable. I even feel pity for my husband and sister. I see. Well, then I better get ready to move out quickly. I don't want to be a burden on you too. I'll write the divorce papers and send them later. I called a friend and managed to clear out the apartment in just 2 days, which made the movers amazed at the speed. The thought of the pathetic pair made me want to laugh, but I kept those feelings to myself. A few months later, I received calls from both my ex-husband and sister. I had a pretty good idea of what they wanted, but I called them back anyway. Hey, Sandra. A notice of rent arrears for the apartment just arrived. What's this about? There's no way I can pay this amount. Can't pay? But you married Ryan, right? Then ask him to pay. He's got plenty of money, doesn't he? I responded calmly to my sister, who was resentful. She continued to rage without calming down, pushing her anger onto me. He doesn't have any money. It was all a lie. Everything was a lie. This is just unbelievable. Oh, really? That's too bad. You were so happy about catching a big fish. But maybe it's partly your fault, Tracy. You believed everything Ryan said without really looking into him. If you had, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Honestly, I also hadn't looked deeply enough at my ex-husband, I thought self-deprecatingly. Shut up. What I see in Ryan is none of your business. Just pay for this apartment. Feeling a bit sorry for my ignorant sister, I decided to tell her everything. All right. I feel a bit sorry for you, Tracy, so I'll tell you everything. About the rent arrears, the high-rise apartment was actually rented by me, not Ryan. Did you think I moved into his place? Huh? This isn't the time for jokes or lies. It's neither a joke nor a lie. Just listen, okay? And about Ryan, did you hear anything? He's a top pastry chef, very popular, and he's focusing on management now, so he doesn't need to be at the store. I was amazed at how easily my ex-husband could lie, and I also sighed at my sister who was deceived by such lies. I didn't feel sorry for them, but I kept telling them the truth for their own sake. Well, it's obviously a lie. Ryan is not a top chef or anything. He's just a part-timer. Understand? You were probably deceived by his claims of being a major shareholder or successful in stock investments. Yeah, but you should know by now, Tracy. Ryan is just a part-timer without any savings. All that talk about stock investments he claimed? I was the one doing that. You? No way. You couldn't possibly do that. Feeling stuck with her who wouldn't believe me, I switched the call to video and showed her my bank account balance and the lease agreement for the apartment. Watching her face pale over the screen felt very satisfying. Let me explain it so that even you, foolish Tracy, can understand. I'm the one renting that apartment. I left the lease in place because you said you two wanted to live there. But now the lease is in your names, so you two are responsible for paying. But Ryan is just a part-timer. Not a chef, not anything. He was just living off my earnings. He can't do anything without someone supporting him. It's truly unfortunate, not the catch you thought he was. Hearing all the facts, my sister started crying over the phone. Seeing her like that didn't change how I felt. I prepared to end the call while she was still sobbing. I'm not free to chat all day, you know? I've said what I wanted to say. Like I said before, do as you please from now on. Bye. I doubt we'll ever speak or see each other again. After hanging up, I felt incredibly relieved. My ex-husband, who gave up chasing his dreams, and my selfish sister who only thinks of herself. Just the thought of no longer having to deal with these two naturally brought a smile to my face. Months later, I heard that the couple canceled the lease on the high-rise apartment. They managed to arrange to pay the back rent in installments. The results of the background check I ordered out of curiosity were quite entertaining. Ryan is now working as a day laborer doing physical jobs. If he had truly pursued the dream he talked about when we met, he might have been a successful pastry chef by now. Tracy is also working all hours, it seems. Their life has become tougher since getting married, and I hear they quarrel almost every day in their cheap apartment they rent together. A couple who cannot support and hold on to each other won't last long. It's not my place to say, but sooner or later, I think they'll divorce. As for me, I'm enjoying my single life. In fact, I'm quite done with marriage. I think I'm better off living alone. Trying to sync life's pace with someone else was nothing but a penance. I've continued with stock investments and even started a new business with yearly increasing profits. I tried different kinds of businesses, but what resonated with me the most was starting a vocational school. I established a pastry-making school, becoming a bridge for those chasing their dreams. It's a school that accepts anyone who truly wants to realize their dreams, regardless of their age or background. While pastry making did not become my hobby, I have grown to love pastries more than before by interacting with various sweets. Moving forward, I'll continue living life my way as a contented single person.
I'm pregnant with the boss's child. Could you please get a divorce soon, old lady? The woman who called me an old lady to my face was just 22 years old, freshly out of college. She deliberately clung to my husband, the president's arm, and smirked at me, leaving me nothing but to sigh. My husband, always busy with work, never came home, always out on business trips. It turns out, those weren't for the sake of his employees, but for his own affairs. I felt terrible for the staff. When I said nothing, the young woman beamed triumphantly. Well, it must be a shock, huh? To have your husband, who earns $100 million a year, taken away. But it's not your fault, old lady. Because there's a huge age difference between us. Of course, he would choose me over such an old lady. I'm going to be the celebrity wife from today, so you should live within your means, old lady. Despite my growing anger at being repeatedly called an old lady, something else caught my attention. $100 million a year, whose story is that? The young woman looked at me with a puzzled expression. From the way she spoke, she seemed to think my husband made $100 million a year. I looked at my husband, whose complexion had clearly worsened. At that moment, I had a good idea of what explanations my husband had given her. And I turned to her with the brightest smile. Hey, do you know? That person is. I am Emily, 50 years old. I met my husband Tom, of the same age, through a friend's introduction and we got married. After marriage, we started a company together, struggled together. And now we've grown it enough to hire employees. Although we married late because we were busy with work and have no children, we live fulfilling days. However, as expected with age, I feel more tired than when I was younger. And I feel pain in various parts of my body, yet continue working. The same must be true for Tom. But if his hard work at the company and his efforts for the company were evident, I would at least offer some kind words daily. But from my husband, Tom, I can feel no such earnest attitude toward his work. Today, as soon as he returned home, he lay down on the sofa, watching TV and lounging around. Even when he does speak, it's just complaints about this or that part of him hurting. He acts as if I should listen to him because he supposedly works more than I do. Hey, get me a beer. It started again today. Get it yourself. I'm working on the materials for tomorrow's meeting. Tom opened the refrigerator with an exaggerated sigh. Really, doesn't someone here know how to pamper her husband? A wife should support her husband. If you just listened obediently, you might seem more charming. Initially, as we didn't have children, we could spend more on ourselves than others. Dining at upscale restaurants and frivolously calling our outings dates. Thinking we'd always get along just as well. Bringing work home and flaunting to me that you're busy with work. And relied upon at the company, it's because you're so fussy that you never finish your work. And so, he continued to taunt me today, irritating me and then quickly going to bed. Leading his whimsical life. Recently, it's apparent that he's not genuinely invested in his work. He tries to look good, claiming no one is more dedicated to the company than he is, but it's all talk. He becomes arrogant in the presence of only subordinates. Sometimes assigning menial tasks based on his preferences rather than their capabilities. No subordinate would dare complain to him. And as for raising it with someone higher up, who do you talk to about a boss who spends his days preaching? It's only a matter of time before the employees break down. If I speak up, he says it's not my business or that it's his concern to handle. But I can't just ignore the growing unease within the company. I didn't want to bring work discussions home, but the only time he's around is after dinner. As I was clearing up after dinner, I broached the topic with Tom. Haven't you been a bit harsh with your subordinates recently? What are you talking about? Tom asked back while watching TV. It looks like you're making your subordinates do your work. He sighed heavily. The company's performance has been declining. And I'm trying to start a new venture to contribute something. That's how you talk to someone who's trying? He muttered sarcastically to himself. A new venture? What's that about? I haven't heard anything. Because you and the other employees don't do anything, I have to step in. I'm not pushing work onto my subordinates. I'm asking for their help because there isn't enough time to work on the new venture. He said this without even looking at me. You complain that I have a bad attitude towards my subordinates. That I am forcing work onto them, or whatever. Me, a company-minded person, is annoyed by you. It seems he didn't take my warning well. What you're doing is just imposing on others. Do you think your subordinates can just say no when you ask them? If you're asking them, you should at least be covering for their workload, shouldn't you? Otherwise, it's just more work for them, and they can't handle that.
Yeah.
I got it. What a nag you are. He said this wearily and went to his room. Afterwards, seeing Tom merely coming to the office without actually working, both I and the employees could only grow more irritated. When I finally get fed up and force myself to make time at work to confront him, He works hard for about an hour. But soon he's just on his smartphone the whole time. And he doesn't seem to be serious about anything. The employees probably have a lot they want to say, but since I am his wife, they feel they cannot speak up. I had no choice but to keep an eye on Tom and support the subordinates. Seeing this, he looked down on me, showing no signs of improvement. We had agreed to decide on the company's direction together. Yet, this new venture that he keeps talking about, I've never even heard of it. If the performance is declining, we should be investigating the causes and urgently devising countermeasures. I'm fully committed to this. But the company's performance can't recover because Tom keeps meddling. Even though I've told him that launching a new venture now is too risky. With our current financial resources and that we can't cover the costs. He won't listen and just shuts down any discussion with a "don't interfere with what I'm doing." Lately, he's been coming home late, and when I ask why, he grumpily says he was meeting with clients. But he seems to be going out frequently. And not just for meals, but apparently to places with women present. He asks to write it off as a business expense. But I can't approve it every time when I don't know who he was with, what the project was, or how many people were involved. Even when I press him, he just says it's for future business or a key client. But never gives specific names. He even says that as long as there is a receipt, it shouldn't matter. One day, while I was out on business, I saw him at a cafe. Perhaps he was working on some documents. But knowing him, he was probably just using it as an excuse to get out of the office and slack off. As I approached the cafe to speak with him, I noticed another figure in the window seat. He seemed to be sharing a table with someone. Looking closer, it was a woman, and quite a young one at that. I didn't recognize her. She definitely wasn't one of our employees or someone from a company we deal with. At this time, and during working hours, with whom? Could she be the business partner Tom was talking about? She didn't seem like someone who would frequent a hostess bar. And I wondered if she was really capable of handling a project at her age. I shook my head at the thought. It's not good to judge someone by their appearance or age. Also, I'm aware that I've been a bit harsh in my judgment of Tom lately. So much so that I've started to wonder if she's not his business partner, but perhaps something else. But maybe he is trying to change the company in his own way. I thought about setting aside time to talk with him and have a long discussion for the first time in a while. Perhaps my behavior up till now has made it difficult for him to consult with me. So I left the scene and headed to the next sales office. After returning home, I had dinner with Tom. Speaking of which, you went out today on business, right? Was it about the new project?
Yeah.
Something like that. He replied nonchalantly. I saw you at a cafe at noon. Was that woman someone from the client side? Were you spying on me? His chopsticks halted, and his voice clearly soured. Spying? What are you talking about? I just thought I should greet her if she was from the client side. Is she coming here on a scheduled day, or is there something secretive going on that needs spying? He glared at me. What do you mean secretive? That girl was someone I was interviewing to get involved in the new project. Interview? I haven't heard anything about that. It was sudden. I don't need to report everything to you. Who is she? Is she a staff member, a part-timer? What employment conditions did you tell her? Why do I have to explain that? If you think there's something fishy, then keep thinking that. I don't have time for such pointless discussions. You can't decide on hiring by yourself. We have enough staff and tight budgets. So we decided on no new hires this year. She must be really exceptional, huh? I'd like to know who she is at least. Tom stood up from his chair. His face clearly red and bothered, and he refused to even glance at me. You're not having an affair, are you? I finally voiced my long-held suspicion, but he said nothing and went to his room. A few days later, during the morning assembly, Tom mentioned that there was someone interested in visiting the company. With a full smile, he opened the door, and there stood the young woman I had seen at the cafe. She just graduated from university recently. Please be nice to her. The university student greeted everyone. Looking around, the employees all seemed puzzled and looked at me as if they thought I knew about it. I was unaware of such an arrangement, and suddenly having her come for a visit was unexpected. Your name is? I'm Catherine. Thank you for coming, Ms. Catherine. Due to a communication lapse with our staff, we are unprepared to host your visit today. May we contact you to reschedule? I'm sorry for coming so suddenly, Catherine said, retreating behind Tom. She clutched the hem of his suit, looking like she was being scolded though she hadn't done anything wrong. He told Catherine not to worry and sent her home, then he sat at his desk looking disgruntled. May I have a word? I called Tom to a meeting room and pressed him about Catherine. Really, you can't just bring someone for a visit out of the blue without consulting anyone. What were you thinking? What's your problem? You were nice to Catherine, but now you lecture me? It's just a company visit, don't make such a fuss. Just a visit? What if she shares what she saw here with someone else? We have a lot of client information here. If there's a visit, we make sure sensitive material isn't visible and that a guide is assigned. Despite my confrontations about his lack of crisis management, Tom was unfazed. He just left the meeting room with a calm face. Seeing Tom casually refer to Catherine and protect her, I grew more suspicious of their affair. Later, when I asked Tom about Catherine, who had visited the company, he said he didn't know what happened to her after her graduation and told me to drop the subject. The new venture he had been boasting about also ceased to be discussed after Catherine's visit. Perhaps it was just an excuse to meet Catherine. And now that things seem to be going well with her, perhaps the company doesn't matter to him anymore. I can't understand why he brought her to the company. If they could just meet outside under the pretext of business calls. Moreover, by bringing her to the company, all employees now know about Catherine. I couldn't understand what Tom was trying to do. Lately, he has been leaving work at the regular time, being the first to leave the office. He doesn't come home, and often doesn't return until the next day. On the rare occasions he is home, he drinks beer while watching TV. And frowns obviously when I return. You came home early today.
Yeah.
I finished my work early too. Tom replied reluctantly. Bath. Saying so, Tom went to the bathroom. As I was organizing some groceries, I noticed his cell phone on the table. It wasn't particularly alarming until the phone began to ring. It was Tom's phone ringing on the table, displaying the name Catherine. After it stopped and started ringing again, Tom came out from the bathroom, grabbed the phone, and glared at me. Don't touch my phone. Don't you know what privacy means, you shameless woman? Saying this, he went to his room. From Tom's room, I could hear him laughing loudly, talking about how noisy I am and how he wants to divorce me and marry Catherine. Suddenly grasping proof of his affair, I wondered what to do. After a moment, I knocked on Tom's room door. I'd like to talk with both of you. Let's meet all three of us. Tom, still on the phone, joyfully asked Catherine to arrange a meeting. After he hung up, he told me he had decided to divorce me and marry Catherine. And nothing I could say would change that. He looked satisfied. Later that weekend, Catherine came to our house, visibly pleased. She looked around the house and smirked. So this is your love nest, huh? Well, it was, until now. Catherine spoke as if the divorce was already settled, sitting at the table while I served her tea. Immediately, Tom came out of the room with the divorce papers, asking me to sign them. Catherine looked at me with a triumphant expression, thinking she had been chosen over me. "Hey, ma'am, hurry up and sign the divorce papers, will you?" Disgusted with both Tom and Catherine, I signed the divorce papers. From that day, Tom stopped coming home. A little while later, I got a call from Catherine. We got married. It was a sudden call. "I'm pregnant with Tom's child. Starting today, I'm the celebrity wife." She laughed crudely over the phone. "You must be too upset to say anything." "That's understandable. After divorcing a husband with an annual income of $100 million, you must be facing a bleak life." Former company president's wife. "It's so sad, it brings tears to my eyes. Should I offer you some charity?" Was it for the money? Otherwise, why would such a young woman get close to Tom, who had neither good looks nor any other appealing traits? It seems that Tom has been seduced by the young woman and fallen for her. But she seems to have a misunderstanding. Oh, the one with an annual income of $100 million is me, the president. He was just the president's husband and an officer. But since we're divorced, I'll remove him from his position. So, prepare yourself, because you won't be living the life of a celebrity wife. Over the phone, Catherine suddenly fell silent after hearing this. After a moment, she shouted back loudly. "Huh? What's that? I won't forgive you for lying like that, you old hag." With that, Catherine hung up. Soon after, Tom called me. "What did you say to Catherine?" It seemed Catherine had confronted Tom about it. "I just told her that she thought you were the president, but it's actually me. Also, I'm removing you from the officer position, so your salary is going to drop significantly. And the celebrity lifestyle isn't going to happen." I was just giving her a heads up. My reply only fueled Tom's anger, but I couldn't help but feel it served him right. After all, it's bad to tell such a lie that was bound to be uncovered. "I'll be filing for alimony, so be prepared," I said and hung up. The next day, Tom and Catherine stormed into the company. Unable to contain their anger, they walked boldly past the employees and Catherine confronted me. "From now on, my husband will be the president. You need to leave." Catherine and Tom thought that if they could get rid of me and Tom became president, they would secure the $100 million annual income for themselves. "Even if you're gone, all the employees will follow me. After all, I work better and am more respected than you," Tom boasted loudly. But the employees were just being polite because of his status as the president's husband. They had seen him skipping work and finally divorcing over an affair with a university student. Their gazes were cold. What would make them want to follow such a man as the head of the company? Unaware of the employees' cold stares, Tom continued to yell at me. And Catherine got even more carried away, screaming to hand over the company to Tom quickly. I thought I was finally free from the marriage, but they were still clinging on. Knowing that talking wouldn't resolve anything but having a duty to protect the company and employees as president, I responded. "Both of you need to calm down. It's disgraceful for adults to be shouting like this. And Catherine, it was you who mistakenly thought your husband was the president, right?" Catherine approached me with an even louder voice. "Huh? I don't care about that. Just hand over the company to me." Catherine was relentless, almost ready to physically confront me. But one of the employees intervened. "Enough already. If you keep making a scene, we'll call the police." Led by that employee, others stepped between me and Catherine. "We won't forgive you if you do anything to our president. You're a nuisance. Get out." The employees' stern faces pushed Catherine back. The employees, who had been subdued around Tom due to our marriage, changed their demeanor drastically now that we were divorced. Tom looked surprised. Well, they were just enduring because of me, their boss's wife. If I had just said, he's my husband, and neglected to address the issue, they wouldn't be supporting me like this now. What's with you people? Don't come near me. I am the president's wife. I'll fire all of you. You know, you can't just change the president like that. And even if you were the president's wife, that doesn't automatically give you the power to handle personnel matters. Despite my words, Catherine continued to shriek uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Tom stood beside her, completely dazed. Apparently deeply affected by the disdain from the employees. Perhaps he was overwhelmed by Catherine's vile berating of me. After a torrent of insults, Catherine, realizing she would not get the future she envisioned, ignored the stunned Tom and stormed out of the company. Tom glanced at me with a start, but when I gestured dismissively towards the door, he hurriedly followed her. After evicting these troublesome people, I went around and apologized to each employee personally. Afterwards, Tom and Catherine's relationship deteriorated. They engaged in fierce arguments, with Tom insisting on not divorcing because of the child, while Catherine demanded a divorce. It seems my being the president and their domestic strife frightened Catherine into fighting with Tom. They began to blame each other and were even planning to sue each other. Honestly, no matter how much they quarrel or how messy things get, it doesn't concern me. I just need to claim my alimony. There's no way their wrongs against me could ever be erased or justified. I filed for alimony soon after, but the overwhelmed couple lashed out at me. Filing for alimony at a time like this. It's all your fault, it's your responsibility. Tom rambled nonsensically, but it just sounded like the howling of a loser. After getting a lawyer involved, Tom quickly agreed to pay the alimony. Despite his tough front towards me, he meekly complied as soon as a lawyer was mentioned. What a small man. For a long time, Tom and Catherine kept flip-flopping between divorcing and staying together. But they eventually divorced. And here's where the story turns both ridiculous and trivial. Catherine's child turned out not to be Tom's. Looking back from Catherine's delivery date, she was pregnant before she met Tom. And the real father was unknown. Catherine had planned to claim the child was Tom's, divorce him, and demand child support. Once Tom and Catherine learned this, their situation devolved even further. You'd think they might have seen this coming, but Tom truly believed the child was his. Catherine had hoped at least to get some child support from Tom. But it was impossible since the child wasn't his and they hadn't been married long. Catherine reluctantly returned to her parents' home, but they were very strict and, after learning of her actions, they told her to leave the house and never return. Catherine tearfully clung to her parents, begging to be allowed to stay for the sake of her child. And they reluctantly agreed, though they no longer trusted her. They started re-educating her from scratch. It would be no surprise if Catherine had been disowned, but because she had a child, she was allowed back home and even received help with childcare. Considering what she did to me, her punishment seems too lenient. Leaving Catherine to her own devices would probably lead to her causing similar troubles again. She seems like the type of person who doesn't know the meaning of remorse. In that sense, perhaps it's best she lives under the strict rule of her parents for the rest of her life. Given Catherine's character, even strict parenting might not change her nature. She is likely to struggle through life, which seems fittingly unfortunate. Blinded by money, Catherine approached Tom claiming the child was his, aiming for an easy life. But look how that turned out, it's really laughable. After the divorce, Tom was living with Catherine in a new apartment. But they chose one beyond their means and soon couldn't afford the rent, forcing them to move out. It seems Tom had also been spending a lot on Catherine during their affair, flaunting his wealth with expensive clothes and luxury cars, all financed by loans from financial companies. Moreover, These loans were high interest and compounded into massive debts. When instructed by lawyers to pay alimony to me promptly, he couldn't even gather the money, incurring more debt. Chased by debt repayments and unable to quit his job despite causing so many problems, Tom was still at my company but could only perform menial tasks, and became nothing but a nuisance, with increasing hostility from everyone. Perhaps unable to endure the company environment any longer, he finally resigned on his own accord. Now, Tom had lost his home, job, wife, and everything. Later, I heard from a company employee that they saw Tom living on the streets, which made me burst out laughing. Serves him right. With savings in place and the company thriving, I've never been happier to have secured the alimony from Tom. Thinking about the past me, who considered enduring a life together with such a man, sends shivers down my spine. I finished my beer and lay down, feeling as if all the fatigue and bodily aches had eased. Now that the stress of being with Tom was gone, both the employees and I could work more freely. I've since started a new venture with employees who trust and support me. And the company has grown even larger, making every day feel rewarding.